Hi, welcome to One Word a Day. I'm Sophie, your pilot into the universe of Chinese. We are going to continue our Markov chain style of sharing one expression, Chinese expression, normally made of 4 characters a day, and the yesterday's expression and today's will share at least one common character. So that way you can see the same exact character, how it may have a different meaning in a different context because Chinese is contextual based. Okay, so 步步为营, we talked about that. It's basically taking each step and then build on top of the previous step. So 步步为营 talks about some very conservative, low risk taking behavior that you firmly going and kind of build up your reach your goal in an incremental way. Okay, so today we continue with 营造法式. 营造法式. Okay, by the way, these are the tonations of the language, right? This is rising tone, falling tone, kind of a fall and then rise tone. Okay, 营造法式. Okay. I'm too bored to do repetitive stuff such as pronunciation. So if you're really into this language and want to know how to speak it, pronounce it correctly, search out for some programs. I have no recommendations over there. Pretty sure there are plenty of them. Over here, it's just to make sense of how Chinese language making sense. How meanings build upon meanings and get, derive new meanings from it. Yesterday, we talked about 营, and 营 was barrack yesterday, or kind of a city dwelling thing that got kind of security guarded domain, and then got the fire, which is kind of light at night. So lighting you can imagine as kind of like a city lighting or kind of an urban scenery there, that this is a secured place where at night you may have lights because these are not individual, these are purposely grouped together, cohabitat, like a giant cohabitat arrangement that people live within here. So in today's 营造法式, it turned out to be the meaning of layout because, okay, Chinese came from this agrarian society, right? So majority of the population back then, before the urbanization efforts in the actually 20th century, just a few decades ago, before that urbanization process, majority of people still living in the countryside. So that means they live in village or somewhere kind of scattered out. But here, this 营 is a little bit more like a city dwelling, right? Got the kind of, back then, ancient fire enabled a light source at night. And then have like a baby looking, but it could be like a multiple people linking together to mean population that's under control. And then within a domain, within a space. So this, we can view it as almost like urban planning, the layout of a space. When you have multiple people, multiple households living in the same space, and they have, they serve a certain function, right? So it's no longer agriculture based, that you have to be close to the land. This is not land serving or working population. These are people live in city. Maybe they're craftsmen or trade or whatever. That's not about farming. That they live together. They have to have this planned out space so that we know where the market is. We know where the I don't know, like entertainment centers is. If back then they have entertainment, I'm sure they have. So this is the kind of city urban planning, and this then inferred into this layout. Okay, 造 造is about build. So build is a kind of generic term as well. Even if in English, when we say build, it's mostly build a mechanical structure, right? Here is comparable, especially in this context. When you will see it, we talk about architecture here. So have this left and right structure. The left structure is about walking sign. We have the foot symbol at the bottom, kind of a cactus-looking, three-toe pointing upwards. And then this is the arch of the foot. So this is a foot symbol. And then we have three strokes representing human footsteps. So we have the evidence of walking, the device of walking, the whole thing is walking. Okay, the right side is it's a sound maker. It's a gao. And a gao means like a verbalize, announce. And why is announce? Because okay, we have this, this is our plant sign. We have some plant growing from the ground. But in this context, okay, the bottom is the mouse symbol. So when we have a mouse symbol showing, it could mean a lot of times that somebody is giving orders. And so over here, I'm not seeing it as a plant symbol, even if it looks exactly like the plant symbol. But over here, it's some kind of device that signifies authority. So you can view it as a trident, okay? Trident used by Poseidon, right? Or some Greek mythology god. That's a special weapon designated for that person. So this weaponry associated with a person, with a powerful figure, I guess, and that in turn signifies authority. So almost like a staff. Or, I mean, last year, we have this choral, is it called a coronation? Yeah, of King Charles. And so their signifier of the authority or the kinghood is this crown, right? So in similar way, so this trident shape is a signifier for authority giving orders. The whole thing is a signifier back then, talking about somebody who are almost like a certified or endorsed by the authority, who has ability to do something. So you could almost view it as the certification, kind of like, okay, today we have to, if you want to be able to be accountant, right? CPA, you have to pass a certain, or lawyer, a board. So you have a kind of authority organization to certify that you're qualified, you have that ability to be specialized in something. So in similar way, back then, people who, walking represent a particular kind of skill or activity. So if you got official authority speaking, like certifying or endorsing you of doing this thing, that means you're capable to certified capable to do something. And that eventually means you're able to build something. So I guess build is not that a simple rudimentary thing, but it came from like a apprentice, practice, a lot of failures, and then you become competent and qualified to do something, especially building house, which is a pretty complicated job, right? And you have to get trained, be very specialized, maybe from father, son, like generations of builders who know how to frame things without collapsing. And because it's also, I mean, back then, probably car building is not that common, but like a house, a living quarters building, that's a big build. That's a lot of money. And also it involves the security. You don't want the walls or the roofs to cave in on people, right? So it has to be somebody who are qualified, certified to build. Okay, layout, build. Together, it talks about the planning. The layout is basically planning function. Imagine before anything is ever done, imagine how it's going to be done. And then造is like actually build it from ground up. So this is two basic phrases or phases of make a house, basically. And 法式, 法. Here we talk about a method, or we can use it to mean order, means something that's written into law, basically. So you order to do things, like you do this is the right way, this is the wrong way. And here it's super complicated. Let me simplify. On the left side, this is water or river sign. You can see it's almost look like a river, right? On the right side, if you see 4 of them like that, it's sort of animal. It could look like a wing of a bird, or it could look like 4 legs of a certain, like a 4-leg walking animal, a beast, right? And this looks almost like antlers of a deer. So the whole thing, the right side, is a mythical animal that has a supernatural or superpower to tell right from wrong. Interesting, right? Like tell right from wrong should be a human function. Society empowered function, or everybody agree to a certain standards, and then some judge trained to read on the laws, right? Sick books to tell right from wrong. But here, the original of this lawmaking or the law carrying entity used an animal and a mythical animal to mean it's tell right from wrong. Okay, so the bottom is a human figure going out. So this is a kind of a distorted of that figure. Okay, the bottom kind of concave, that's the original living quarters of that person. So we can view it almost like caveman living quarters. So that's the entrance of the cave. And then the top of horizontal lines here is arms, and these are the legs. And then this is the torso connecting. So this is just a kind of starfish figure. That means somebody is leaving this living quarter. And of course, this is like not correctly proportioned, because how can you be bigger than your living quarter? But here is, I guess, to keep the balance, because this human figure looking thing have to carry the weight, the 2D visual weight of the pretty complicated characters on top of it. So that's why it's oversized. But at the bottom, it means leaving. So the whole story pieced together is water signifies justice, like even-handed. It's not biased, so to speak. So it's even, because water is always, even if temporarily it may be a hole in a reservoir or something, but as long as the block was removed, the water going to flow and eventually be even, right? So water is a signifier of anything that goes even. And this is the law teller is right, wrong, mythical animal. And then this leaving, this departure is the punishment, the result. Like one of the commonly punishments. So instead of imprisonment, okay, like contemporary solution to that, if I break the law, I put it into jail, right? Back then, one type of punishment is to remove you from your original community, abandon you from your hometown to a far, far away place. And you can imagine back then, it's not that easy to travel back to your hometown, right? It's a long trip and could be dangerous as well, right? So that was regarded as a pretty bad punishment if you were dispatched from your hometown for a long distance. And we don't know if they have prisoner, like how to, they end up going to a different place far away, and what they do, they may not be put into prison, they may be put into labor or do something. We don't want to go into that detail, but the whole frame here made of 3 components already show you the purpose. The purpose is to be just, right? Even-handed. And we have right and wrong telling, and also the consequence of it. So the whole mechanism of how law making or judging is conducted. So the whole thing becomes like law and order, if we want to say it that way. But over here, we are talking about architecture. So architecture is not about the moral judgment. It's about the best practice. If you do it right or wrong. So there are certain methodology you have to follow. Otherwise, your house is going to collapse, right? So this extended into this civil engineering practice. That's methodology. Almost like time-honored, proven true best practice. That's the method. Okay, 是 we have this 公 sign. Here is just, oh, it looks like a it looks like a sideway H in English letter, right? And that is an ancient tool to make sure the craftsmen come up with straight perpendicular angles. So you can see over here, there are 4 perpendicular angles. So that's the ancient, almost like a ruler or some kind of craftsman's tool to make sure they're building things to the right way. Perpendicular is super important to house building, right? And the right side here is a type of tool again. So there is this crossing of horizontal, vertical, and it kind of curved a little bit. And there is a kind of a hook on the top attached. Sometimes it transformed into a weaponry, but this could be some type of tool. So that means you have the craftsman's tool and another tool, which we don't know. It could be a weapon, it could be a farming tool. So these are gadgets or tools used to make things. And especially here, this perpendicular tool dominates the meaning of the whole character, even if it's a smaller on the side of the frame. A lot of times the meaning maker, if we divide it into meaning maker, secondary meaning maker, the dominant one, not necessarily the bigger one in the frame. Okay, this smaller one means a set of rules. So regarded as ruler. Ruler in English comes from rule, right? You have to do things like you have to draw angle or measure distance. You have to follow like a unified standard. You cannot do your own thing, come up with your own measurement. So here is the same, like this is kind of a universal standard you have to follow. The whole thing extends into the meaning of formula. So this is the formula you want to follow. So formula basically is, it's more like a procedural. You have to do this and then do that, do that. That's the right order or sequence of doing things. And the method is kind of the best practice you want to put it. Otherwise, it's going to fail. So both 法 and 士 are kind of a time-honored way that people before you already summarized, formulated into the things you got to follow. Basically, it's a tried and true best practice, right? And these are, you can regard it as a tool sets, toolkits to help you succeed. So the whole thing is building manual. This is a real thing. It's Song Dynasty. So that's about 1,000 or less than 1,000 years ago. China is one of the major dynasties. After Tang, so there is Song, and Song is relatively peaceful time, relatively more civil development, civic life. So people can get wealthier at that time. So this architecture of this luxury living, right, started back then. Not started, not the origin, but kind of bloomed, right? Because more people can afford to have their, dream house built. So there's this whole architecture methodologies. You see the building manual, that's what 营造法式 is about. It's this collection of the best practices in building kind of this intricate wooden structure architecture. This is the corner of the roof. So if you ever visited a Chinese house or like ancient building methodology, kind of like a pavilion thing, if you look up at the roof, you will see like spokes of like beams, and they intricately like laying out together to lock into place, and also kind of to securely hold up the roof, and the roof is kind of built in a certain angle. There's not only functional but also aesthetic meanings attached to it. So this is the classic Chinese book about architecture. 营造法式. Hashtag to the currency of thinking by one word a day with Sophie. See you another day.